Leozen Gallant, ex-king of France, current. What rank are you in France now? What sort of dignified title have they given you?
I'm just another Fils de France, essentially our unit of second in command.
Interesting. Well, welcome. Thank you for taking the time to do our interview today. Definitely appreciate it. I think your audio is coming in fine. Everything should be perfect. So, Leo, we're going to get right into it, and I hope you're ready because we're not going to do any softball questions today.
I think I'm ready, man. I guess we'll see going forward.
So, first off, you look pretty rizzed up. Did you go to the barber shop before this? This is a huge deal for you.
No, man, I actually didn't. I think you just asked me for an interview at the perfect time. I thought, fresh trim, might as well.
There you go.
Here we are.
Hey, I appreciate somebody who looks good for the interview. Unlike Belides, he was a complete mess when he showed up. Didn't have his hair done. He looked like a mess.
Wow. I didn't think he had his camera on, but here we are. Damn.
Well, doesn't matter. So, Credenzio Studios is currently working on a project, a documentary of what we like to call World War Levant. And you were the most prominent figure in this conflict back in the summer of 2023. The result of which many believe led you to step down. So as a now retired leader, talk us through your process. What was the war like? Did it have an impact on you stepping down? And what have you been up to since?
Right. Well, yeah. Well, summer was a really strenuous time for everyone. That was pretty damn crazy. Honestly, it was kind of crazy how out of hand it got because there was this cycle of one faction protectorating one, and then like the Teutons would protectorate another, and just kept getting bigger and bigger until eventually everybody was inside the war. But at the time, to be honest, we did have some good ambitions in France. We did sort of want to spread our influence. As you saw with your interview in Belides, Ibit had become a great success, and I think that kind of sort of started when we allied with them, started having wars together. We fought Cyprus and Seljuks. They got developed the Ibids, and we let them go. And so I thought we had some good support from a lot of factions in the game because Federation was sort of like spreading their influence too much in too many regions, and people were scared. So I think that it was sort of a wholesome band together, but it got a bit too decentralized, and maybe that's where some of the difficulty came in, because at the time it was made up of maybe some faction leaders who were a bit more unstable. Sicilian Hosps we had just had a war with, and then there was lots of other desperate factions like the Abbasids trying to get their territories back. So yeah, banding together, we actually found lots of success against the Federation, and it was good for a good amount of time. But surprisingly, you mentioned that I had lots of presence in the war, which is kind of ironic because I was not the one controlling my account for most of the war. I was away in Tunisia, seeing some family in the middle of the desert. So I basically just gave access to lots of people, like Run to Win, Cyber, Renshiru, to basically handle the diplomacy with me, and I was just on Discord. But yeah, I think we did achieve a good victory against the Federation until people maybe got too aggressive and wanted to start taking Melbourne. We got to a point where it was so intense because people were starting to say, "Oh, if we don't attack Malbork for revenge, we're going to leave this alliance." So I think I ordered maybe Bolides or Cyber to start a siege on Malbork. So after and yeah, that sadly didn't end too well. They bounced back, and we signed on a white peace, which didn't really come to any of our aims. But where that comes into place, you were speaking about if that was a reason for me retiring. I would say, yeah, to some extent, but more so because at that point I was like, damn, I really achieved everything I wanted to, like tenfold, for what was going on in the game. And in relation to the coup with Ren Shuru, that was more so spoken about beforehand, because at the time the legacy system was broken, and essentially you needed to coup so somebody could get the faction leader position. Yeah. But yeah, it was still a fun war. I enjoyed it. I think some of the mechanics maybe weren't as great at the time. But yeah, it's definitely making improvement.
You think it's fair to say that you stepping down was a direct result of the war and the back and forth and the grind, and that have a fatiguing effect on you after the months and sort of the Teutonic fighting spirit just over and over again, sieging time after time after time. Did this start to wear on you mentally?
I wouldn't say it was so much of the Teutonic side. I think they played amazingly. They had some good tenacity. Big respect to all of the members of the Federation there. I think it was a lot of logistics on our end. Something we've learned from actually in this new war, which we've seen great success in. But at the time, I don't think the Capetians, vassals, and all of the leaders of all of these allied factions were quite ready and quite had the people in charge that they needed to continue the war going forward. We saw lots of exhaustion essentially around the factions in the alliance, and so many of them started to want to quit, and you can't really blame them for that, to be honest. So yeah, big ups to the Federation for that. I think the Teutonics did amazing, and I also have to give a big round of applause for all of the people on our team, especially the hospitalities at the time who were rallying to an average. And yes, I would say maybe it didn't affect me and the Federation personally, but I just thought at the current time the mechanics probably aren't too great, and I can just hand it over to somebody else. But also, I was going into my final year of college, so I thought, damn, maybe I should start stepping down because it's taking up a lot of time going forward. And I had a year abroad to do in Canada, where I still am. So I'm just going to finish this year and then probably be back to seeing what's going on in Lionhearts. Yeah, no. I mean, to each his own. King Leozan has died in battle, I guess, because of it. I'd say, in
Oh, I'm sorry.
seriously.
I think they missed that last question. I Let me try that one more
Okay.
time. What I said is some have been I accidentally muted myself on stream, but not in Discord. Some have said that you retiring and going to university studies was the coward's way out. So what do you have to say to that?
I'd say, yeah, essentially to each his own. I seriously do advise putting priorities first. Always enjoy line arts if you have some free time. I sadly didn't have too much free time. This was an important year. I think my decision is justified because I've still been able to give France a good hand. But yeah, to each his own. Your opinions are your opinions.
So we've got the big pressing questions out of the way, the most obvious, relevant, recent one. But we know your time in Lionhearts extends a lot beyond just this last year. Tell us a little bit about how you found Lionhearts, what was called Third Crusade at the time, what prompted you to become a faction leader, and then what allowed you to have that endurance to lead for so long, where many can barely take leadership positions for more than a few weeks without crumbling.
That's a really good question. So I'd say it probably started around 2017, and I was playing this game. I think it was called King of Kings, because my friend Skrillex got me into it. And this game was kind of similar to Lionhearts. It's what I was seeking at the time. It was a game where you could create your own kingdom, create buildings, gather resources, and essentially fight against other kingdoms. But sadly, the owner closed the game, and I saw that my friend that I met there, Skrillex, had just joined in my friend's history a game called The Third Crusade. Excuse me, hiccups. And so I joined it. I entered Jerusalem for the first time. It was a magical experience to sit back the old Lionhearts. I saw the animus, the scripts, and that was really cool. And I saw some English outside, and I joined them first. But afterwards, I saw the Byzantines and joined their faction. Yeah, so this game was everything I really wanted. I saw a world map, some faction conquests, faction warfare, the reason I still play it today, but in a different form, obviously, back then. And I saw that the Byzantine Empire was really, how do I say, incompetent. We had Frontage of Legend at the time. I'm not sure if you remember him, but yeah, he was online dating. He had some Byzantine emperors. They were really, really cringe. And we
Classic
had
Byzantine
Isaac.
behavior.
I won't talk too much about Isaac, but yeah, he became leader. I started serving under him. Then I served under Delvix, and eventually, over a long period of time, having fun back in the classic days, well, these classic days, 2018. I eventually got leader, and yeah, it's been good. Moving from that, France was a few years later, but that was after the large success we had in Byzantines. I know that's why you invited me back, because of my performances to the emperor. Um, and actually, France was kind of founded as an extension of the Byzantine Empire, because so many of the Haicom I had in the Byzantines became Haicom that I have in France. Even to this day, with Fluffy Muffin, even Renshiro was a Byzantine I rank. Yeah.
Why didn't you give up? Why didn't you stop? Many would consider 1 year of faction leadership to be grueling. It's like a job. For anybody here, many people watching this have not been a faction leader. Leo and I have had the privilege of taking on these positions for extended periods of time, and especially when toggling real life responsibilities, it is a job. You feel this responsibility. You feel this, if you're actually a good leader, you feel responsibility and not entitlement. And I know that's probably what you did feel, this responsibility, this calling. Look, I have to get on this Saturday. People, I'm not a low rank. I can't just say I'm busy. I have to get on. I have to wake up at 3 a.m. for this road battle. The Teutonics are sieging Malbork for the 90th time in a row. Okay, I have to do these things. What did you do to get through these periods of this immense responsibility? And we're talking years, you and the Hero Doctor, where there weren't many big periods of breaks or inactivity. You guys were pretty much on top of it, especially you. I know Hero took a few breaks, pretty much on top of it consistently. So talk us through what sort of structures, what did you do to get through this? Because again, it can be grueling.
Yeah, so that's a really amazing question. I'm not sure if you remember. Of course, you actually do. We spoke about it before. For like the first 7 months of Reimagined at the time, Reforged, the game was really, really bad, right? You had to do the data wipe, which killed it even more. The combat at the time wasn't too great. So I wasn't actually active, to be honest, for the first maybe 8 months in France. We had some big rallies at the beginning, and we were grinding at the beginning, but we saw that the game started to die, and even I died. Like, I just didn't play for like 7 months. And at the time, the only reason I was the only high rank left is because I was too lazy to retire. And I think you guys brought in activity quota. If factions could at least rally 2 people or 1 person and take a picture, then you would keep the leader. So I was shocked to come back 7 months later and see that I was still a leader. And I looked, how the fuck is this possible? Excuse me for my language. Then Senshiro, I saw big ups to him, because every single day, every single week, he posted a faction activity thing by himself for France, just to keep me as a leader. And I was kind of inspired by Senshiro there. I was like, damn, you know what? The game's actually can have some potential. So we came back, we started fighting. This is like 2020, late 2020, 2021. We saw that all of the other factions were dead, so we didn't really have too much competition, and we started just grinding and stuff. Then soon afterwards, I remember you released the City of Acre, and you released a new combat update with that, an early trailer. And that's when the game started really to kick off from the Brave. And it inspired us even more to try and keep this lead that we had on top of other factions. Because honestly, we found it just really fun bullying lower level players, if I'm being frank. And also, I couldn't have done it without my gang, which was at the time a bunch of veterans from the old gens. It was Renshiro, who's still here to this day, Fluffy Muffin, Jacob J. Curses, Desired Embers, who is dead, JJ Curses, and yeah, maybe I'm forgetting some. But those were the main ones. And they are Icon that I've had for ages. And then afterwards, to keep me going, I just kept thinking, shit, maybe one day this game will become good. and I want to try and keep France's like current historical legacy going until one day it can reach those heights, so that not all of it is wasted, and that we can always have this sort of head start and keep the same culture, just having a chill vibe, not be too militaristic. Yeah, that's pretty much it, man. That's what kept me going. Just keep the legacy and the culture of the France I built.
Great question coming through in the chat. Remember, guys, you can always donate on TTS in the link in the description. If you'd like to ask Leo a question using TTS, we'll make sure Leo answers it. So if you have any questions, please pop them in TTS. But for this one, coming through in the chat, what was your high point during your reign as King of France?
That's a really good question, actually. Yeah. To be frank, my reign was so long, not as long as yours, obviously, but my reign was so long that I think we've had multiple high points, and I can't really pinpoint one. But if I had to, I would assume I'd probably say 2020, early 2022. This was a time where we had multiple communities built in France. We had Burgundy, and early 2021 actually. We had Burgundy being led by amazing leaders that we've had later in history. For example, Trin was one of the main High Comm of Burgundy, and he's the king of Jerusalem now. He has been for years. Jews Christ, who went on to lead the Zengids, leading them for years. And we also had just some people there, Run to Win as well. But yeah, we also had really amazing people in Flanders at the time too. I think every single division was rallying maybe 10 to 15. At the time, we didn't have Verdunda. So I'd say that was a high point. We were rallying maybe 30 on the average. And that was just a really, really good time.
Fascinating.
Actually, to add on to that, just real quick, I think France isn't really a faction which attracts too many people. As like yourself sort of hate France when you hear about it, you know? It kind of goes the same for most Americans, which are the main community, even for Europeans. So I'd say we're not really attractive as a faction, but those that we do recruit do stay for years on years and sort of become better equipped, and that's sort of our high point, our strength.
Something you said earlier, that 7-month period where it was either Senshiro or Renshiro, I didn't quite catch it. That was posting those activity.
Yeah, that was Senshiro.
Senshiro. I think very pertinent and relevant to credit the great high ranks and people that help you along the way. As we know, as a faction leader, you're only as good as the high ranks you surround yourself with, because there are going to be times, hey, I can't get on at this time. I can't do this. I can't host every training and raid. And I think that's one of the differences between an average or a mediocre leader and a good leader or a great leader, is who do you surround yourself with and keeping those people around. However, it'll also be a double-edged sword. Sometimes you have bad judgment and you pick somebody that betrays you or is totally incompetent. I'm not asking you to call anybody out, but what was your selection process for choosing high ranks that you could really count on? Somebody that, hey, I don't know you very well, but I'm going to give you a shot, or I've known you for years and I just know you'll do a good job. I mean, what was your process for selecting these high ranks? Because I would agree, France has had some legendary ones.
I'd say the selection process is probably just time. As I said earlier, we didn't grab many new recruits, and we still don't to this day, because France just isn't as attractive as Teutonics and Templars that are the most popular, and Assassins. But through time, when people actually earn their position as a meritocracy, then they actually end up caring about the faction that they served in. You know, there's so many instances where there's these big power grabs of people attracting people from, like, bloodlines, for example. This bloodline would say, hey, let us join, give us ownership of this and the high rank, and I'll bring in 30 people. But that's never a great investment. Sure, you can recruit so many people temporarily, but none of them are going to want to stay because none of them grew with a faction, experienced their entire gameplay through the faction. They don't have love for the faction. They're just there to flex and assert their own power. And I think we've seen this with Sniper Rothward. He keeps bringing in Tankfish and lots of other edgy bloodlines maybe in the past with other factions, like the Taxmen in Cyprus. So yeah, I think it's just time. Let them start caring about the faction. Let them enjoy it and earn it, and then they'll want to bring it. They'll actually want to bring something back to it. You know, they'll actually want to care about making it active.
So for you, a homegrown approach, meaning nice, a homegrown approach, meaning not somebody where you free rank them or you say, hey, let's bring you from out of here, but somebody that has actually gone through that meritocracy, that trial by fire. That's something interesting to hear you say, because it's definitely what we feel the foundation of Lionhearts has been, is meritocracy. We really feel like if you're not good at your job, you will be weeded out one way or another. Like maybe there's been some frauds who have made it to leader in the past, but they don't last long. Could you say a little bit more about that meritocracy? Do you feel that's a good word to describe Lionheart?
In terms of the grinds, I guess, yeah, it's a good one. I feel like lots of people that we see as developers or judiciary too, they've actually earned it because they've been here for a good amount of time. They've actually earned their positions. It's nice seeing new gens come in fresh off the boat and then seeing them grow into the community as well through all of those jobs, and some of them becoming QA analysts or just start joining the tailoring team. So in that way, in that aspect, yeah. And for lots of factions, I feel like they also have some good culture of a meritocracy, because that's what faction gameplay is all about. You have all of these lower ranks, and a lot of them aspire to make a change, leave their mark on the world, which is amazing. And for that, they have to earn higher and higher positions. And I think you can only keep trying to push that so that people have a good a good incentive to keep playing the game. So yeah, I would say to some extent, Lionhearts does have some good meritocracy elements to build off of.
Best part or parts of being a faction leader, and worst part of being a faction leader?
So I'd say that's another good question. I'd say the best parts are definitely when you see efforts that you've been putting in, investments of events that you've been hosting firsthand, or just writing up these documents, putting these systems in place, and seeing that pay off, seeing people actually enjoy your events, seeing them enjoy your faction. I think every faction leader should try and provide a great experience to their newcomers so that they can enjoy the game, especially so the faction culture. And for the worst, say, it's those times where you kind of get fucked over, like if the game is kind of not going great in terms of Pilgrim, improvement levels and shit. It can be really, really difficult. It can be very demoralizing. And yeah, no, that's the case. I don't think people should be too negative about losing in the faction unless they get, absolutely crushed. I think it's always a good experience to grow and learn from, but I do think it can be very demotivating. Also, there's a lot of time which has to be spent in just so that you can see some stuff pay off, because obviously the game isn't putting hundreds upon hundreds of people to start recruiting. You have to keep the people that you have. Yeah.
Any strategies for retaining recruits that you've used that you would recommend?
Oh boy. Yeah, so I mean, considering most of our strength is based on player retention in France, we just try and keep it familiar in terms of how we operate. Obviously, we still keep the faction professionality and stuff during events, but I feel just game nights or just chilling, just hanging out in VC can be really, really useful. So that's sort of building your own personal community, and people can enjoy being there for just not the Lionhearts aspect, but the other aspects that your faction has. Like for example, I think Juice, he had a really, really good Zengad's culture, and they were the strongest they had been. They had Minecraft servers, they played other Roblox games, they hosted a football tournament, and that was really cool.
So even
So I
just
think that's a
extending
good way
outside the
to
game,
do it.
trying to build that community within the faction, trying to build friendships and bonds, so they're more likely to come back.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously, there's lots of stuff which is that you can do in games still. And that's like the foundation. But yeah, this community is kind of built, and usually it can extend outside of the game, which we see a lot. I think if there's more activities to do for just friends in the game and just like hangouts and stuff, that could be just really cool. There's more stuff to do together as a faction.
So we've
I have
got a
phone call that
$2
just,
super chat from Baylor Postal. How do you think you inspired the leaders of today? Oh, if you need me to repeat that, I can.
no, I heard. Yeah. How do I think I inspire leaders of today? Um, Honestly, I think they kind of inspire themselves. I don't really have much to do with it. Um, I think the game has finally come to a point where, through trial and error, a lot of the formerly dead factions have sort of found their own legendary figure to keep them active. We've seen now there's an amazing performance in the Ayabid with Goliath, been doing a great job. Byzantines with Howling have been doing amazing too. I thought when the Isaac drama happened, we won't get into it. I thought when that happened, there would be some massive decline, but Howling stepped up, brought them back to stability, and a big shout out in the Byzantine Empire. They've been pulling a massive amount of weight for the allied factions against the Federation. And big ups to Cyber and Nub and Martina for letting that happen too. Yeah, man.
I'm gonna give you a
I
difficult
think
one.
all of these factions are.
Are you ready?
Yep.
Discounting fellow Capetian allies, so factions that you did not have an extensive history being allied with, maybe even adversaries with. Which leader that you fought the most, or just that you fought in general? Oh, okay. Now the super chat's just now coming out.
How do you
Yeah, no
think you
worries.
inspired the leaders of today?
So we already answered that. I thought the super chat wasn't being read, so next time we'll just wait. But we've already answered that. But thank you for the donation very much. £2 from £2 from Baylor Postal, as they would say. So my question, I'll repeat it. Of all your adversaries that you've ever faced, leaders that you were not allied with, which one do you have the most respect for, and why?
I think it cuts out for me. Do you mind repeating that? Sorry.
No worries. I'd like you to pick one, and just one preferably, leader that you've faced over the years and fought, kind of had to duel between France and them, that you have the most respect for, despite the fact that you were enemies.
While Tarask comes very close to second, I'd say he's like the catalyst for the new generation. I'd say probably the Hero Doctor and also Epenphonic, who was a very old leader of the Teutons. I'd say maybe these two because they were from like the generation when the game was starting to take off. And for a long time afterwards, Hero was the only person I could relate to. Genuinely friends hanging out. And it was nice to have somebody else who kind of understood the struggle. So yeah, big respect to Hero because we always found ourselves on the opposing sides of history that had this mutual respect at that point.
You both were kind of outed as leader at the same time. Both you guys were both so legendary. It was kind of, you both kind of let the outing happen. You didn't really fight it, even enabled it. Did he reach out to you, or did you reach out to him at the time of these coups? Of course, for context, both Hero Doctor and Leo here couped, and they are no longer the leader of Templars and France. So if you guys reached out to each other, what's your personal relationship like with the Hero Doctor?
And so I haven't spoken to him actually too much since those days. We probably haven't hung out as much since. Just being friends. But I think, yeah, no, it was kind of unfortunate. It was under different contexts because Iggy was genuinely just, I think, out. Was really, really inactive for a time. I was really inactive for a time too, when after the Fukushima War, I was still abroad for a while. Came back. And I think, yeah, no, it was kind of a shame in both aspects, but it just goes to show that after so long, you can sort of be tired of it and help somebody else, through coup or through elections or through an error if you have your legacy status. So yeah, no, I respect him for just letting it happen. That's fine. I think Templars have actually come back with Tila after Iggy retired. So that's good to see their performance.
They seem to be doing pretty well, as is France. I wouldn't say France is at the same heights they were under you, but I don't think they've completely died off either. We released some interesting tier lists that stirred up some controversy. What do you think about your own rank in the leaders tier list? And what do you think about France's rank in the tier list?
Oh yeah, nice questions. So yeah, no, I'm humbled for my own rank. I'm given a lot of credit, but it's definitely all the people around me who brought those heights. So shout out to everybody in France with Seventh Legion, the Shirus, everybody else was third party. And yeah, no, so I respect that a lot. Thank you very much. Right? But yeah, also with France, I'd say people underestimate Renshiro because, well, he's not the best at diplomacy, but he's just does SB just because he doesn't take the game too seriously. He's an old gen like myself, and with Hospitallers, when he used to lead them, they were legendary, probably the strongest they've been since pre 2019. So I think that he can be very competent. I think maybe France is lacking. It probably shouldn't be S tier for our current activity, but we can still rally a good 10 to 15 and lots of old gens. And if I DM'd people, lots of them would show up. But yeah, France definitely still has lots of potential. It's not dead. We've still had some great victories recently, multiple actually, several. And yeah, I think Byzantines should actually be up there too. To be honest, with their performance recently, it's been insane. Probably the strongest faction in terms of activity. So yeah, that's basically it, man.
The Byzantine France alliance was definitely pretty legendary and extended time. I have a question about Tarask. He's somebody I honestly don't know much about. Our DMs are less than a page. You can't even scroll down because of how few times I've talked to him. And yet his name has come up many, many times, surprisingly. And of course, we've been aware of Teutonic's success, but I've never really reached out to him. We are going to be doing an interview with him at some point. But what sort of qualities do you see? He's obviously an example of, he's a high A tier rated new gen leader. He doesn't have the longevity that you or Hero Doctor did, but he's certainly an up and coming. I mean, he has that obviously inspiring performance over the summer where Teutonics were just relentless, although it was a back and forth war. And they have done some amazing things in the Central Levant. Obviously, have been probably one of your biggest competitors, especially territorially in that area. What do you admire most about Tarask? What sort of qualities does he bring to the table that you think lead to success for him in the Teutonics?
Amazing question. Yeah, no, I think Tarask, he also earned his position through meritocracy. He was there when Saturn was still leading, and he sort of took the helm for the Federation, and I think he was a great replacement. He just keeps the order. He doesn't take the game too seriously, which is what you love to see in a leader, and he can just keep it chill. I think with that, the Teutonics and the Templars also have this really intricate system for their ranking structure. They keep it very, not bureaucratic, but very organized. And I think he's played a big part in just making sure that this system always works as it should. And honestly, Teutonics are just one of the most popular factions post Magna Terram. They definitely deserve it. At the same time, I think, so many of our border scuffles have come because if you think about it, Acre is the only base which is one garrison away. Like, we're one of the only strongholds which is bordering directly to an enemy faction. And then we're also on the coast on another side. So we find ourselves very surrounded. And because of that, I reckon we're always kind of under pressure from the Teutonics at our border, since they own Nazareth and Zekinen, because it's literally one garrison away from Acre. So yeah, no, I think they definitely deserve the respect. I want to shout out maybe sort of the high club as well for keeping it going, like Zach and Chopper, which is what Gel Lucy won. Yeah. So yeah, I think they've been doing a great job. Obviously, they take some breaks, uh, and they're probably not winning now. But they don't take it too toughly.
Yeah, it is sort of interesting you bring that up. France is in the center of the map, the world map. It has holdings in Sicily, central Levant. It's close enough to be affected by southern Levant. Not really northern as much, but your Byzantine allies are there. When you contrary that with somebody like the Templars, who are squeezed into a corner, be a lot more defensible. Perhaps it's harder to be offensive. Do you think that the geological positioning of France forced you guys to kind of be more active just to survive?
You know what? That's actually a really interesting point, and I think you may be right. Um, I think that's probably a big factor which played into this, because when Magna first released, it was chaos on day one. Um, Essentially, we got wards by the Teutonics. We kind of warred them at the same time as mutual. And Sicily at the time, which was led by Rudolf Noki, were a major powerhouse, equal to France Spears and the Templars and Teutons SPA. And they were basically backing the Teutonics from behind. So they would attack from Sicily, coming through the Kuipers portal, start attacking Kuipers, while the Teutonics would come from the front. And this kind of brought us into a mega defensive circle. And after a long war, back and forth, us capturing Malbork, Teutonics capturing Acre, we decided to make a mutual peace where France would gain Nazareth and Zekinen, and Megiddo, I think, at the time. Then afterwards, we went to go focus on Sicily to take revenge against the Sicilians, who were coveting everything from behind enemy lines. And we just captured everything there, and it forced Rudolf Noki to retire. And ever since, Sicily's never been the same. But I do think, yeah, our positioning has been a major incentive for us to keep playing. We also find ourselves now with the new garrison resources, finding valuable garrisons like Leon Fort run by the English, garrison. Those are really important. So it's always been good to attack the English. And I think now in the geopolitical landscape, forgive me for anybody in chat because I'm not super familiar with it, like everything, but we're surrounded by literally only Federation factions. Think of it as like, actually, I have no analogy. It's probably going to be too risky to say, but yeah, think of it as being surrounded by the Hospitallers to the north, the English to the west, the Teutonics to the east, and they also have small backing in southern Levant, so they're always close by, and also Sicily, well, pro-federation and association as well. So I think even to this day, we have a good incentive to try and keep defending our borders.
And I think, to your credit, you've done that just as much through diplomacy as raising arms. And you mentioned it there, tactical alliances, and I think it was your masterful diplomacy that even allowed for you guys to take the whole map. I mean, was there a moment, and you mentioned it already, so we don't have to go over it, but that moment when I've conquered the world. I've got 8 vassals under my faction. The rest are, on their way out. France is on every single region. They're almost every single territory. I mean, that's a huge achievement. And to your point, I think with the Sicilians as well, people forget how good Rudo was in that Hoss-Sicily alliance. And you're right, they haven't been the same. And they're memed on now because of how inactive they are. So France has had a major impact on that geopolitical space. But I want to pivot here, if we can, and bring it towards how I can learn as a developer, obviously, about your experience. You obviously talk to so many people. So what has been your favorite update to Lionhearts, and what has been your least favorite?
Right. Yeah.
And this is, of course, stretching back 6-7 years for everybody here. So maybe more recent, I'd say more keep to Lionhearts than TTC, just because it might be more interesting. But whatever you want to say.
I'll say one thing for TTC, then the rest for Lionhearts. I'd say for TTC, it was when, what was his name? triple frequency when he added separate servers for road battles, because that was the first time we saw better performance for those RBs on Saturdays, and that was sort of the catalyst to what we have today with multiple Levants, different teleporters to different areas. So that was like the first step. And then now going to Lionhearts, yeah, so the game was pretty mediocre, I'd say, when it first released and reimagined. No offense at the time, because I know there's some drama.
Certainly, it was an incomplete product.
Yeah, and so I'd say when everything kind of took a 180 in that regard was when the updated combat came out, and with Acre too. Acre was a side bit of it, but I feel that was the first like flick to where we are now. Obviously the game's performing much better. Still not amazing in every aspect. I'll have some questions for that, but yeah, I think that's when everything started to go uphill since.
And your least favorite update or addition to the game?
Oh, my least favorite update. Sorry, I didn't remember. Let me see. A good one. Very good one. Honestly, probably the 24/7 thing, which happened recently. I think every other update has kind of added to the game. When you try to change it to 24/7, I tried to offer some solutions, but it started to just be a bit toxic, and that's just in recent memory. Just it was a bit toxic in terms of everybody having to stay on. I saw lots of people in that small time period, kind of just no life in guards garrisons for unhealthy amounts of time. So I think it's good being time gated.
It definitely,
also, yeah, the data wipe bit.
It definitely was an ambitious solution that I came up with and didn't work out, admittedly. But I am glad we know now, and I think some good solutions came out. I like the new cooldown system or cooldown stack over time, and I like the new guards. So some of the things that came out of it, I think, were good. But ultimately, I would agree it was a disaster as far as what we did is we tried to implement solutions within that update that would prevent burnout and make it so a person didn't feel like they needed to guard 24/7, but the goal was I can go fight when I want to and not fight when I don't. But it just didn't work out that way, and it just was too hard to implement a solution that would work that way, especially with our current player counts. But I definitely acknowledge that it did not work out at all, and that's an understatement, and I'm glad that we were willing to remove it, although it did take some time. Speaking of more recent developments, the game's gone paid access. This is pretty controversial. I've heard the Celtic leader told me earlier today that everybody else is just coping and he's getting recruits just fine and they're staying longer. And then I have other leaders saying it's impossible to recruit and that it's a terrible update. What's your position on paid access? I assume you've seen the video that we released on it, or I know we might have spoken briefly about it, so I assume you have a nuanced take, but go ahead.
Yeah, just ahead of time, I'm just going to go quickly use the bathroom after this question. I'll be like 30 seconds, 40 seconds. But
no problem. We can take a short intermission.
What is the price right now, actually? Because it doesn't show me since I'm...
Right now, the price is 240 Robux. So I'll give everybody the full history. We started at 25 as an entry point, and also so we could pay out people at the cheapest possible price as we were transitioning, because everybody who applied and was in the group and did all the things got the payout. And then we moved it up to 59 as an experiment, and our plan was to incrementally increase it until we hit a drop-off. Now, we jumped from 59 to 395 because we felt that it was slowly going down, but we wanted to really concretely know, okay, and this is sort of some economic theory, so just excuse me on this, but is this increased price going to make the game more attractive? Because sometimes if something's too cheap, people don't want to buy it. So we experimented with that. That didn't work, and now it's at 240. And on Monday, we plan on bringing it back down to 160 and seeing how that works, because we're still not enthused with the sales, although all the other analytics have been great.
Yeah. Well, with regards to the question that you had for me, I think maybe right now, how the game is, personally, I'd value it around maybe 80 Robux or something. That's just my personal opinion. I'm not an expert on the analytics or anything. So yeah, I think maybe that's like the most modest price for people to actually enjoy what they're getting out of the game. It leaves room for it to go higher as like more of the medieval aspects, like your property update is going to do.
Great. Well, actually, planning on going down to 80 if 160 didn't work. So it's funny that you say that. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe below. If not, leave a dislike and tell us why this content could be improved in the comments below. We'll see you guys in the next one.